For that report. We truly appreciate it. Let me bring in now my guest. Trial attorney Kirker Davis is with me today. Holly, great to see you again. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here.
All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this case, obviously. As I said, this is a tough one for the defense, and I was actually very surprised to see that they didn't give any notice of any affirmative defenses. The fact that maybe there might be something they could claim here regarding some kind of mental issue or perhaps even a self-defense, that she just wanted to talk to her and things got out of hand. I mean, that's a long shot as well, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the case.
Absolutely. I'm on the same page with you. In fact, when I see this woman speak in the court proceeding regarding her attorney, it feels like there is some capacity issues at play. Obviously, when you have a person who is so obsessed with the fact that there is a breakup occurring and they can't get over it, and that they choose to stalk this person and contact and harass this other person because they simply want to move on in their relationship, we're dealing with a person that doesn't live in the reality that the rest of the world lives in. So I would be expecting a mental capacity argument or affirmative defense, or perhaps a delay of some sort if there was an inability of this defendant to speak with her attorney properly. But we don't see that. This is a tough case because the prosecution's drawing a hard line. There's no plea offer here at all. So they've really got good evidence. The salient piece of evidence that I thought was very strong was the fact that there was blood on the outside of this woman's four-door Cadillac. And so I'm sure there's going to be an expert tying that blood to the victim. And I believe that the victim called in a previous day, called the police because this defendant was following her again. So we have a whole series of premeditation and obsession and a detachment with reality on the part of the defendant that, in my mind, your defense would have to use at some point, because otherwise this is probably going to be a very quick hearing and a quick verdict. I don't mean to call it before it starts, but without anything so far, I don't know what they could be arguing at this point.
Yeah, I can't see it either. And I thought that there were some facts that could help them in some kind of mental defense, because really, Michelle Boat didn't have any problems at all, didn't have any issues with the law until her breakup with her husband. Then she seems to go a little bit crazy. She starts, she beats him up. Then she begins threatening some other people. She starts following the girlfriend. There was even a call from her daughter saying she was suicidal at some point. So I was really surprised to find that there wasn't any sense that maybe they could argue something on the mental front, but nothing like that seems to have appeared in this case.
It's going to be very difficult to have empathy for this defendant as a juror, because most of the time this behavior doesn't exist in a vacuum. This is the culmination of years of anger and rage and dysfunctional, dysregulated emotions on the part of this woman. And the breakup and the divorce is just the tip of the iceberg and really just the final straw. So I would be really surprised if we don't have a mountain of evidence about this woman's dysregulation and obsession with the fact that she was broken up with. And it happens across this country all the time. So it's going to be probably very difficult. And I predict the prosecution is going to have a very long list of context of this woman's inability to accept reality and move on. And that's going to make her very unlikable to the jury. And a self-defense argument would be great, but I think that'll be difficult when your victim's calling the police saying how scared she is, asking for assistance because the defendant is following her home several times, much like she did on the night of the victim's murder.
And not only that, Holly, she still had the seatbelt on in her car. So how much of a threat could she have been if she's still in a seatbelt in the car? So that's a tough argument to make. But, this case actually is indicative of a few different things. And one of them that comes to mind is this idea that for a couple of months prior to what happened, you had the incident that you've been talking about where she followed the woman around. She was breaking a non-contact order over and over and over, had been arrested and let go. And the family of the victim said perhaps had the system worked better, had she been kept in jail, maybe the victim would still be alive.
Michael, that's a really great point. And we see this all the time in these custody cases and divorce cases where the subject of the lawsuit is the breakup. And so in that context, there are a whole bunch of procedural mechanisms, much like this criminal case, that can allow you to be protected. There are protective orders every day being signed. And this is one of those cases where, we always tell clients as trial attorneys, judges are probably going to be taking a conservative stance in these emergency situations because they don't want to have a person die on their watch. In this case, the system does appear to fail this woman, Tracy, because she sought this help out and this woman refused to follow these court orders. And it might have been flying under the radar. The incidences might not have been as egregious as the ultimate murder was, right? This is just a scorned ex-wife or future ex-wife who's mad at a girlfriend. The cops see that all the time. Divorces and breakups happen all the time. But there's a little bit of a dismissiveness, I think, in the system on these domestic disputes and custody disputes that's unwarranted, because the statistics show that those are sometimes the most deadly cases. So I think there needs to be a little bit more seriousness taken in the criminal side with some of these domestic disputes and violence involving divorce and custody that isn't there currently, if you ask me.
Absolutely, Holly. And I think there might have been some, looking at this case where you see the abuse was from a woman to a man, I wonder if that played a role in them not taking it quite as seriously as they should. All right, Holly, stick around. We have a lot more to talk about coming up in this hour.